Welcome to our graphing systems or solving systems by graphing examples. So our learning target is still, I can solve systems by graphing, and you will want some colored pencils or crayons today. You're probably going to want it every day of this unit. So if I were you, I would just make sure I have them somewhere close. Okay, the very first thing we are going to do is we're going to flip to page 40. And at the very top of your paper, we're going to write solve systems by graphing. Give it a title, don't make it too big, and then we're going to write down these steps. So the steps are always graph your equations or inequalities on the same coordinate plane. So that means on the same graph. And then step number 2 is the ordered pair or pairs, or the region where the graphs overlap is or are the solutions. Okay, so go ahead and pause your video and write down those 2 steps along with the title at the very top of page 40. And now that we're done writing that, we're going to draw this beautiful pink line underneath. Mine is actually orange because I'm filming this the day the Browns play. So I drew an orange line right underneath those steps on page 40. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to break our paper, the rest of our paper, up into fourths. So I drew a vertical line, dividing it into 2 sections, and then I drew a horizontal line dividing it into 4 sections. And today you are going to want to number these because these are going to be examples 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So hopefully you have divided that. We're going to start on section 1. So the very first thing I want you to do on section 1 is I want you to write these 2 equations. Notice I call them equations because they have an equal sign. Okay, so write those 2 equations under problem 1. And make sure you number it problem 1 because we may refer to it throughout this as problem 1. Okay, so whenever we've got equations and we need a graph, you know what we do. We use our handy dandy Desmos. Okay, so I'm going to start by just typing those into Desmos. Y minus 4x equals 2. So there's my red line. And then I've got 3y equals 6x minus 6 is a blue line. And I'm going to draw them red and blue on my graph. If you've got 2 different colors, it would be a great idea to do the same. Okay, now when you're drawing your graph on your notebook, you're not going to want this whole grid. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to draw a graph that's kind of like this. Okay, when you draw a grid like it is right here, what happens is you end up with like all these little boxes and it's impossible to see your actual graph. Okay, so make sure you're not doing a giant grid, you're just plotting those points. Okay, and the graph doesn't have to look perfect because Desmos is going to give us all of our information. Okay, so let's go through and let's just do a quick rough sketch of this so that we have it. Remember, whenever we do a rough sketch, we like to find 2 pretty points. So on this red line, I'm going to draw first. I've got the nice point 0, 2. Now this one is not so nice because it's a decimal, so I'm not going to use it. Oh, but I've got this point down here, which is -2, -6. So I'm going to start by graphing those 2 points, and I'm going to use red. So 0, 2. Okay, and I said -2, -6. So I got to go down 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and remember, we're going to use a straight edge to draw this really nice and straight. Okay, I'm going to use this nice feature that will draw a straight line for me. Okay, so there is mine. When I was doing this in my notebook, I went ahead and I just used Post-it as my straight edge, or my practice notebook as my straight edge. Okay, so there's my first line. All right, next one I got to do is this blue line over here. So if I click on the blue line, I can all of a sudden see these gray points. And actually, all 3 of them that are on this blue line are very pretty. So I'm going to use, I'll just plot them all. So I already did -2, 6. So that's there. I know -0, -2. The y-intercept is pretty, and the x-intercept is pretty. Once we've got that, we're going to draw our line. So let's get my blue, bluish gray. Okay, and I have to edit mine, but you're going to be on paper, so it's a lot easier to draw a straight line on paper. Okay, so I got my two nice graphs. Pause your video, make sure you have two nice graphs on your paper. This is where I like to use colored pencil or marker or pen or crayons because I like to actually draw those graphs in color. It's going to be really important when we do inequalities. Okay, so let's refer back to our notes. We said we have to graph them on the same coordinate plane. Check. And it says the ordered pair or the region where the graphs overlap is the solution or are the solution. So I'm looking at where these graphs overlap. Okay, where these graphs overlap. So if I'm looking at this, that's not a very pretty one. Okay, when I'm looking at this, they are overlapping right here at -2, -6. That's the only place they are overlapping. So my solution, that means, is that point, that ordered pair. So my solution is -2, -6. Notice that I could have just gotten my solution straight from Desmos. I am only drawing this graph because it is my notes and I want to refer back to it later. Okay, but maybe we should make a nice point to use Desmos. Why don't you write that? Because Desmos is your friend. So once again, this one had a solution of -2, -6 because that's where the graphs overlapped. Okay, section 2. So this is problem number 2. Go ahead and write those equations. I call them equations once again because they have an equal. And it's got an equal, so I'm going to do me a solid. They're going to be solid lines. I know that. So let's go ahead and let's type that in. Y equals 2x plus 1. And 2y plus 4 equals 4. Equals 4x. Notice that they're solid. I always like red and blue, so I'm going to change these colors. Notice that I'm just going to press this edit list and click on the color. I'm going to make them red and blue just because those are the only two colors I pulled out of my colored pencils. Okay, so before I even graph this, we know the solution is where they overlap. So right now, I don't see them overlapping anywhere. And I can drag this graph, and it looks like they're not overlapping. Down here, if I come back home and I try to grab it up here, it doesn't even look like they're getting closer. Okay? Doesn't even look like they're getting closer. It looks like they're never overlapping. Okay, so let's draw this picture first. So I'm going to draw my red line first. Ooh, that's a nasty point, -0.5. But if I just drag this down, remember I can just find another point. Ooh, -3, -5 I'm going to use, and 0, 1. I'm going to write that -3, -5, so it stays there. So I'm going to plot that point. -3, so I'm going to go left 3 and down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's a point on my red line. Okay, and then the other point on my red line was 0, 1. So left and right none, but up 1, the y-intercept of 1. Okay, so there's my red line. Use a straight edge, don't be like me. And now I'm going to go ahead and do my blue line. Oh, my points on my blue line are nice, so I'm going to keep them as is. So my blue line is 1, 0, and -2, 0, -2. And if you go back to your notes on page 39 that you took with Miss Castor, we wrote down that sometimes we get weird solutions. Which one does this look like? Does this look like the no solution or the infinitely many solution? Hopefully you said no solution. And the reason why this is no solution is because they never overlap. It never overlaps, so it's no solution. Pause the video if you need to write anything down, if you need to finish drawing your graph, or write your no solution down on your paper. Okay. In the third section, oh, look at these equations. They're crazy. I'm going to read them out loud to you. So it says y equals 3. Do you guys remember what these lines mean? That's the absolute value. So y equals 3 times the absolute value of x minus 1 minus 3. And this one says y is equal to negative, parenthesis, 1/4 to the x power plus 1. Now, if you don't have Desmos open, you're already at a disadvantage. But really, you need to open Desmos and actually practice typing this in. Okay, practice typing this in. So write this down at the top of section 3. And then down at the bottom of section 3, we're going to write this down. Find the solutions, x equals and x equals. Sometimes on the Ohio State test and sometimes on the test that you're going to get in this class, they're not going to just leave it up to you and to write down the solution as an ordered pair. Instead, they're going to ask for specific things. This time, they're asking just for the x values. So pause your video, write down your first equation, and write down the way that this is asking. Find the solutions. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's go into Desmos and let's start typing this in. So the first thing you want to do is you want to show this keypad. Okay, that's how we're going to get these absolute value lines. It's also how we're going to get to the x power. Okay, so when we're typing this in, I'm going to start y equals 3. And then to get the absolute value, you're going to see it right here. And we're going to type in x minus 1 minus 3. Notice that we got this V-shaped graph. An absolute value graph is always a V shape. Make sure you typed that into Desmos, seriously. Okay, now let's type in this second equation. Y equals negative, which is just the minus, parenthesis, 1/4, 1 divided by 4. Remember, that's how we get the fraction with the divided by key. Now we need to take it to the x power. So we have a couple of ways to do this. You can use your keypad and you can press Shift and 6 at the same time, which is that little caret button, or you can press this button, a to the b power. So that brings us up to x, and then we need to come back down, so I'm going to click next to it and do plus 1. So we've got this little graph. So once again, remember I use the divided by key to get the fraction, and I use the a to the b button to get the exponent, or you can press Shift 6. So let's go ahead and let's start drawing these graphs. So I've got a red and blue graph again. I'm going to start with the V. I'm going to use these 3 points to help me draw that V nicely. So I got 0, 0, which is one side of my V. I got 1, negative 3. And I've got 2, 0, which is the other side of the V. This down here is called the vertex, because that's where it changes directions. So there's my V shape. Make yours more straight so it doesn't look like a reindeer like mine does right now. And for this one, this blue graph, I have this point, which is 0, 0, but that one's not nice. So I wonder if I have any nice points. And it doesn't look like, other than 0, 0, it doesn't really look like it. So I'm just going to kind of draw the swoop with that 0, 0 point. So I know it goes down from there and it goes up from here. Remember, these are just rough sketches. They're just rough sketches. Now this time it kind of gave us a hint. It said find the solutions. So you know there's more than one. Okay, so actually they give us specifically 2 solutions because they say x equals and x equals. So we're looking at where these graphs overlap, and there should be 2 locations. And I'm going to make this bold so we can see it. Okay, so when we are just looking at it, we can't really see, but as soon as we start looking at this, we can see there are 2 points that they intersect. 0, 0, and 2.3, 0.96. So let's label those on the graph. So I get 0, 0 right here. And then right here, I have 2.32 and 0.96. That's kind of hard to read. I'm going to write that again. So this one right here is 2.32 and 0.96. Now the question wants us to find the solutions. We found them. Okay, those are our two solutions, but they only care about the x value. Remember, in our ordered pairs, it always goes x and then y. So if I'm looking at this, I know the x is the first number. So when they ask me to find the solutions and they just say x equals, all I'm going to be writing is 0 and 2.32. So pause your videos and make sure you have this pretty graph. Make sure you have these nice solutions as both the order pairs that we put them up here and as just x's down here. And if I were you, I would make sure that I know that it's x and then y, just to be safe. Okay, fourth section today, fourth section. This is the last section we're going to be doing today. So it says f of x equals 2x minus 4, and g of x is equal to x squared minus 7. And it says, for what values of x does f of x equals g of x? So write the whole thing down. Pause it, write the two equations because they have equal signs, and write the question down at the bottom. When you come back, we're going to talk about it. Okay, so you're back. So right down here, this looks really funky, like all of these words right here. For what value or values of x does f of x equals g of x? So all they're asking us is, when are these two equal? And that's always going to be the solution. The solution. This is just another way to ask for the solution. So we're going to do the same thing we always do. We're going to graph it first. So we're going to type it in our Desmos. Get your Desmos out. Make sure you're typing it in. F parentheses are x. And remember, we read that f of x equals 2x minus 4. And g of x is equal to x squared. Remember, we can use the keypad and square it. Or I could press on my keypad Shift 6 to get the exponent up top. Minus 7. I notice that these aren't both linear this time. Just like the last one, when we had that V shape, that's okay. Okay, that's totally okay. And then we also have a linear. So let's start drawing the f of x. I'm going to draw that first. Now, if I'm looking at this, I have all 4 points that lie on this line are nice points. I don't need to graph them all, but I can if I wanted. So I know this is a nice point. The x-intercept at 2, 0, 3, 2 is a nice point. And that would be enough to draw my line, but because I don't have my straight edge, as many points as I can is even better. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then so all of those are solutions to the red line, f of x. But they want to know when f of x equals g of x. So I also need to draw some points from the g of x graph. And if you're looking at this along with me, not every point is nice. So I see this one is not nice, so I'm not going to graph it. And that one's not nice, so I'm not going to graph it. So I'm going to graph these 3 points. So this one I had already graphed. Here's 0, negative 7. And then I've got 3, 2. And I'm going to draw this as the U shape. That's called a parabola. Okay, we're going to be studying them a lot this semester. Now the question asks for what values of x does f of x equal g of x? So it's asking where do they cross each other? And if we look, it doesn't cross just once, it crosses 2 times at 3, 2 and negative 1, negative 6. So I got 3, 2 and negative 1, negative 6. And the question says for what values of x, similar to the last question. So remember, we've got x and y. All they said is they want the values of x. So my values of x are negative 1 and positive 3. That's what I'm going to be telling them. So what values of x make them the same? Would be x equals negative 1 and x equals 3. Make sure you have this whole problem for section 4. Okay, so we are done with our problems. I want you to try this one problem on your own. Y equals 2x plus 5 and x or 5x minus 1 equals y. So they're both equations, and I want you to answer what values of x make the equations true. And actually, I'm going to say values, because I'm not sure if it's just one or if it's more than one. So what value or values of x make the equations true? What is the solution? Okay, when you're all done, you need to take a picture of page 40 and a picture of this problem with your solution, what your solution should be.